Welcome to this episode of the Bombers Club podcast. I'm Bobby Bradley, a man who reads at a third grade level, but I did win the 1994 Knights of Columbus State Free Throw Championship. That's all I have to offer to this group. But the man that needs no introduction, a man that just came off his third world championship, Mr. Kyle Berkshire. Not only did Kyle win the world championship, but this is going to be a good podcast. He went 579 yards at Rochelle Ranch, and then we decided to just clear out a steakhouse. And he broke the ball speed record on TrackMan at 241.6. We got Kyle, and then we do have a man down here that does need an introduction, a man who just extremely crushed the life of one girl. If I give him D-list celebrity, I'm being generous. Bobby Ray, but he did win Paradise Hotel, but he did lose the match against me in Wyoming. So, Bobby, thank you for making my son proud of me. And then also a man who doesn't need an introduction. He goes by the name in the golf industry, Golfzilla, but in the long drive world, he is known as the GOAT, the 2015 senior world champion, but 5-time Open Division world champion. Jason Zuback, thanks for coming on the podcast. Greatly appreciate your time and can't wait to talk and rap with you and hear about all of your accomplishments and what you saw at the World Championships and what you've seen over the last month.
Definitely great to be here, guys, and to be in such an esteemed group. Bobby Ray with I would say A-list celebrity status, right? He, in the realm of kind of entertainment and what we would say reality television, unparalleled, I would say, and bringing that same mix and that same action to the world of long drive for that entertainment value and stuff. And, guy I love listening to, but also watching, compete on the grid. And, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but I mean, Bobby had a good, Bobby Ray had a good competition. Bobby Bradley, not so good. But
Good for him.
Bobby Ray really battled. I was proud of him because he's been working hard all year. Really battled hard. It came down to for him advancing and being in the final group of the round of 32 to advance him to the round of 16, and able to advance out of there, which was some great grit and fight. Bobby Bradley, like a last minute entry into the World Championship, stepped up he had valiant effort put forth, for being thrown into the fire on the tee. But, for those of you who don't know Bobby, one of the, top prospects coming out of high school, Pittsburgh Pirates organization. So, I would say a true, athletic marvel, and as well in the long drive. But, Kyle, 3-time world long drive champion now. And, one of my, good friends, somebody I love sharing, kind of the technical stuff with. But, like in the golf.com article where Josh sends, I call Kyle a super unicorn. I hope he didn't take offense to that because, he's not kind of like a crazy creature, but just in the unique nature and, his athletic ability combined with that work effort to produce, what we see 3 world championships in this super competitive era of long drive. But I'll hand it back to you, Bobby, after my, my 2 cents worth there.
Well, I say Bobby Ray, it's funny because the first time we met Bobby Ray was last year, and Country Club Adjacent's in the booth with us, and they are just ripping him and talking about Abercrombie and Fitch model and just, he's got the look.
How is that? And by the way, how is that ripping me? That's like the nicest thing anybody could ever say to me. If you knew who I am as a person, I'm like, yeah.
He's a great ambassador for the sport of lawn driving, and said, we're going to brag about Kyle here in a little bit. But having Bobby Ray walk into a room, they're just like, who is this guy? And he just always has a smile on people's faces. Yeah. And he really is a good competitor. He's gotten a lot faster as the year went on. And you watching a vast majority of it, Jay-Z, like these dudes are so much faster now, and they're becoming like pinpoint laser accuracy, hitting 2-3 balls in play and putting up big numbers. And watching guys like yourself and Mobley trying to hit certain aspects or spots on the grid, it's a different dynamic now. A lot of these guys are just trying to go full throttle, but guys like Bobby Ray that are 210, 215, they really need to focus on accuracy, and accuracy does help out later on down the road. But I guess talking about the World Championships, what did you see from the World Championships, Jay-Z, that you really liked?
Yeah, like that. When I I think, you and I had chatted a bit, but I mean, as far as the quality of the competition, man, when we got, down to, the specific rounds, we got down to the top 30, 32 and 16. It's great. Like that top 16, if we go back to when Bryson hit, that top 16 in 2021 was like absolutely killer, right? And then 2022 was like awesome. And this year, what we saw was this extreme parity, right, where all the guys were performing at a high level. If we look at the ball speeds, guys are putting up huge ball speeds, hitting balls in play, and that's reflected in how we do the points now, where winning your group of four is 200 points. Second place is 100. Third place 50, fourth place 25, 0 for out of bounds. But guys are hitting it in play, but there's that parity, so you get this point structure that's all bunched up. With the exception of Kyle, because Kyle separated himself, from that by winning four groups, essentially four groups in a row. Kyle had a little problem in the first set of, kind of getting it in play,
big
but
problem.
once Kyle got it in, but it was, crazy competitive, and it just, speaking to you, what you said, Bobby, like these guys are putting up huge ball speeds, right? Like if they're catching it, you know, it's not just the ball speed, but putting up good golf shots where they're launching it at the appropriate angle with the appropriate amount of spin, with minimal amount of what we call axis tilt that determines curvature. But I mean, guys, it was awesome to watch. And the only problem I saw was that wasn't on TV. That top 16 on TV, when four guys are on the box together, and all the guys are performing at a high level, like that's as good as it gets. That's as good as it's ever been. And I would have loved to see that on TV, and just the the fans' reaction to that, because we get to see if the flight scope does catch. The flight scope was publishing the ball speed, club head speed, and spin rate for each competitor, right? And although it had a little bit of problem catching Kyle's stuff, and Kyle and I talked about that, most likely due to the his extreme speed, where he's at a level where perhaps the software, perhaps even the hardware, has a hard time catching up to with that at that 99.99999% percentile of ball speed. Anyway, but it was an awesome display, and I as a fan of the sport and somebody that has experience in the sport, I thought it was awesome.
Well, the one thing that really changed that I liked was Kyle. We in the beginning of the year we went to a playoff, like a heads up match in the round of 16. I love that in the round of 16 at the World Championships, it was a round robin to get down to the final eight, because what could have happened? Kyle went OB in the first round of 16. He would have been out of the tournament. He fought back. He won 4 straight rounds. And for me, I think the biggest change was, one, him being healthy and then switching to the LD 30 plus. Because, I always said, like, he was a unicorn. He was a super unicorn with that shaft. And because of injuries, he ended up going to a softer setup. But Kyle, like, the floor is yours, bro. I mean, that was fun to watch. It's fun to watch your journey. I know that talk about the last 16 months, not getting a win until the finals, and the lead up to it.
Yeah, I mean, it was frustrating. I think a lot of it had to do with the combination of bad luck and, to be totally honest, a format that I don't feel like necessarily benefited the longest hitters all the time. Because one of the things that I've always felt this sport needed to change if we're truly going to recognize long drives winning tournaments is a graduated grid, because baseball, shot put, javelin, all these major sports that have speed and distance as a major contributor to success, they all have boundaries that expand out at a diagonal way. And the reality is, the faster you swing a club, the harder you hit a golf ball. You can create the same exact angle as if someone's swinging slower, but the slower ball might stay in play, whereas the longer one goes out, just because it has traveled further. And because unless you hit it geometrically 0-0, every single inch a projectile travels, it is moving away from the center line somehow. Whether that be the center line it started on, or if it's curving back towards the center line, it'll eventually hit that center line again and start moving away from it. So when you have a rectangular grid, what's going to happen is a lot of the guys who are really fast and hitting huge balls, they could actually have created a tighter angle at the ball with more speed, but still go OB because the grid is a rectangle that physically gets narrower the faster you swing. So I think that was a big thing where I felt like, dropping down to 6 balls was tough. And then I also, having heads up matches, regardless of how well you did throughout the tournament, where, in Colorado, I won 10 straight sets, and then all that was completely washed away. And I was starting from a totally clean slate in a round of 16. And, it's definitely a tough change of pace to go from being in the tournament and kind of cruising through to all of a sudden being an elimination match. But at Worlds, I kind of I knew I had an edge on everybody with speed, so my main focus was just kind of keep doing what I was doing, keep hitting the center of the face, don't do anything too crazy, don't get too excited, don't get too down on yourself, just kind of keep plugging along. And I knew I'd have a great chance if I just kept doing that. And then the round of 16 was very tough. Toughest round of 16 I'd ever been in. And with a ball that's notably slower than a lot of long drive balls in the history of the sport, we had across every single strike in the final 16, this includes pop-ups, 215.7 mile an hour ball speed was the average across every single swing that was recorded. And it should be a bit higher, but I had a lot of mine miss. And I'm kind of disappointed because I think the fourth set, I hit 412, 416, 422, and 426, and four balls out of my 5 swings. And I would have loved to know what those numbers were, because there's a 402 that was 217 ball speed in that group. So probably was honestly closer to 217, 218 average if more of my balls were captured. But it's just tough. You got to keep doing what you're doing. And, I knew eventually things would have to go my way. And, I figured once that ball against Justin in the quarters stayed in, I thought there's a pretty good chance today was my day. And as long as I didn't get in my own way, I felt like if I hit 2 more good balls, I'd win. And, I hit that hill on the left side dead into it both times in the semis and finals. So I did my best I possibly could to still lose the tournament with where I was putting the ball on the grid. But fortunately, I was flying it far enough. And I just honestly think my speed was just kind of, I don't want to say overpowering, but I just think gave me a lot more room for maybe a couple bad bounces in the grid where I could still survive them and win. And it's the big one. It's what everybody wants to win. And I try not to think about it too much throughout the week, but I definitely really wanted to win this tournament, and it worked out really well.
For those of you listening, to give you an idea specifically, if I had to guess, I would say Kyle's average ball speed is probably 7 to 8 miles an hour faster than the second best average ball speed. I mean, do you think it's that big of a gap?
Yeah, I actually sent the stats.
Do you know specifically what it is?
Yeah, so I averaged across. Unfortunately, the flight scope tended to miss my center strikes quite frequently in the round of 16, which I believe is due to when you hit a center strike, the face doesn't move very much. There's not a lot of interference. I think part of what monitors rely on is a disturbance to recognize a shot's been hit. So the balls that did capture, I think 13 were captured. I averaged 226.4 or 5. Okay. I have my notes.
Just one sec, Kyle.
Yeah.
We should issue. I'll sorry to interrupt, but we should issue a disclaimer that what Kyle's about to say is incredibly impactful, but please don't let it affect your preparation for next year. But this is going to be very telling on what, to Bobby's point, this separation between Kyle and the rest of the people. So don't take it to heart. Make yourself work harder to catch him. So go ahead, Kyle. Sorry to interrupt.
I'm just gonna quit. When I hear this number, I'll probably just gonna quit. But
first off, I want to preface that in addition to what Zuback said, I want to say, like, to be totally fair to everybody in the field, like, I want to also say that the competition these past couple of years has been the toughest I've ever had to deal with, and the hitters that have come along in the last 4 or 5 years since I've been in the sport. Some of the best hitters I've ever seen in my life. And don't like I can promise you every single time I go out there and compete, I feel like I'm going to war. These are some unbelievable athletes, and the swings these guys make and the speeds they create is incredible to me. So this isn't necessarily somewhere I feel like there's any kind of separation. I just think, our games are different, and some guys flight the ball and some guys hit different parts of the grid. My game is just speed. So that there's a lot more that goes in a long drive than just speed, and a lot of these guys are unbelievable at the other facets of the sport, and that really makes it it makes it a war every time. But I believe I don't think I can check my notes because it's saved in my iPhone. But I ran the numbers in the round of 16 because I was curious. But I think I have something in the order of 226.5, something like that, average. I think JJ was 219.2. Owen Meads was 217. And then there were literally like 7 or 8 guys between 214 and 216. And then a couple guys in the 211, 212 range. But every single person in that round of 16, every single one of them averaged 210 plus, which is like it's unbelievable. And the more impressive stat is 13 of the 16 guys hitting a very slow long drive ball touched 220 or faster. Had we hit the AMT from 2019,
Oh,
I can say with confidence every single hitter in that round of 16 would have hit 220, which is just a crazy number to me. And it goes to show the talent of this sport now. I mean, it really does. Like, this was by far the hardest world championship I've won. Not even close. And the quality of the hitters every year, I mean, you just have to get better and better to stay with them. It's really incredible. But, you know, I think that was probably my best round of 16 ever in terms of average speed. My body just kind of clicked. And, I wish some of the numbers had captured because I think, to be honest, my average was more like 228, 227.5. But a lot of the center strikes it didn't capture. But regardless, that was a fun round of 16. And after the third set, I was so amped up. I almost felt like I was foaming at the mouth. I was so stimulated with adrenaline and stuff because it was so much fun to go full tilt against those guys. And, what was incredible to me, and it shows how good everybody is, the bubble was 525. And for people so just for context, that's for people that are watching who are maybe don't really know the scoring system. Let me just put it this way: that's essentially like the cut when you have a cut in the PGA Tour be like 10 under par. Like that's pretty much the best way I could say it. Like just to apply, you got to shoot 2 great rounds, and so 525 was the bubble, and that happens when you don't have guys winning too many sets and when you don't have many OBs. So what this showed, at max pressure, guys were hitting the ball in play, and no one could get a win. I think besides me, not a single person, and this was really what is incredible to me, not a single person got one more than 2 sets. And only 2 OBs. Yours truly, I think, was certainly one of them. But yeah, it was just incredible, and it really opened my eyes to how good the players had gotten. And I mean, I felt like I just went to war, and it was just insane. And you could see it in everybody's faces. These are the best hitters in the world. You can see it change in the first day or two. They're relaxed and they're kind of thinking back, all right, I'm on set 3. I wonder what I'll have for dinner tonight, get ready for the next round. But you can see it, like these guys, you can see it in everybody's faces. This is like a full tilt war. And like, I'd be curious. So Jason, question for you, because you dominated in the late 90s and into the 2000s for a very long time. What is the biggest difference you've noticed in terms of the event and I guess how things are run and what you need to do to win now versus back in the day? Because I know one of the things we talked about, because I grew up watching you win titles, and the format's different. And my question to you is, what would you have to do differently to win at a world championship in late 90s, 2000s versus now? What are like the differences you see and how to take those titles down?
Yeah, probably the biggest difference is obviously, the format where sorry, my dog's my
he's
dog's
excited.
he's
He's gonna be
excited.
famous.
Yeah, the format difference is probably the biggest dictator of sort of how things are constituted now in, you know if we go back in the start of like kind of world long drive, competitive long drive era, which is 1995, where Sean Pfister claimed his first title, to present day long drive. Let's call that the, kind of the modern day long drive. And that the format back then was either a double elimination or a modified double elimination. What I mean by that is, um, once you've had two losses in any round, you were gone from the competition. And so, like you could have one loss, but you better not have another one or you're going home, right? But even in, a good chunk of that time, it was modified double elimination where the first day it was true double elimination. So you could have a loss in a group and also, come back through the loser side to still advance. But once you reached beyond once you got to the second or third day, there was no more double elimination. So it was uh, in a sense that you didn't have that many chances in the competition to advance. So there was this balance of, obviously, the farthest is the best, and distance was what we were after, but also that accuracy component was of a premium. So I think kind of that balance, as we're now with the point structure and in the round robin format, where you have a fair chance. I think the way it's contested now, that a guy that has a bad set or two bad sets, hey, it's okay. If you perform at the highest level, you can still get through in the round robin point structure, where it gives you a fair chance to advance through the competition. And that's probably one of the biggest changes, as where Bobby can speak to this, where
Oh yeah.
you need to win, like even finish in like 5 second, 5 second place finishes will get you through. But winning some of these groups when you have to win them, when you're given the opportunity, because there's that, you need to perform the best you can just because of the how good the competition is. And Bobby Ray, you can speak to that in the competition as well, where you need to take advantage when you need to take advantage in the round robin format.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm relatively new to the sport, so I only know it this way. I only know the round robin format, and I personally think it's a good format, which is why Kyle wanted to extend it through to the round of 16. It allows for some margin for error. Generally speaking, the best hitters are the ones that are there by the time you get to match play. It's not very often where you get a clunker or a clinker in there where it's like, man, how did he make it through? Because over the course of 5 sets and putting a premium on wins, generally speaking, the longest hitters are going to get through. Uh, if I had it my way, we would do some sort of an elimination format or something like that. Because I don't go OB very often, but I like to get 100 points, 100 points, 100 points, and then every single time I get to my fifth set, as Kyle says, I'm a bubble boy,
We're gonna
and
change
it's
that
just
this winter,
about
though,
it's about
Bobby.
pure speed.
We're
Yeah,
gonna
it's
change
just
that this
about pure
winter.
speed. And I need to. Like, it is what it is, right? Like, I flight it well. I spin it. I think all three of my round robins this World Championship, I led the field in balls in the grid. But whoop-de do. It doesn't. I mean, I get a little performance bonus, but it doesn't matter. I was hitting these little pulls or these pull cuts with like 2,000 spin, but I was hitting them down the left side into those hills, and I never had big numbers come out. And so looking back, if I had any chance of getting deep into the tournament, I needed to swing all out, and I needed to hit it down that right side of the grid. But the point is if you aren't a 220 guy and you're expecting to final eights, it's probably a little naive of you because you're going to need some good breaks to do that. So going into next year, if you're not somebody who can throw up 220s in competition, I'm not saying stay home, but you know, to expect to win events or to expect to get deep in events, like I said, is naive. Like, I'm a realist, and I knew going into this event I was going to need to catch some good bounces and good breaks to get deep into the tournament, and that was the case. So the format's really good. I think, speaking to what Kyle said, with a graduated grid, it makes sense, right? And it's not like a baseball diamond where you have a 90-degree angle, like just a little bit, because you're creating more margin for error at those speeds. It's like Kyle mentioned something to me the other day, which was interesting. against Justin James. Justin James went 397, and Kyle, his winning ball, his sixth ball was 432. But that ball was running out. It's like all he wanted the ball to do was sit. So an interesting point is like the ball was in play past his opponent's ball. So therefore, you would think like he would win. At that point, all he wants to do is stay in play. And it's kind of weird. It's like you can almost get hurt for hitting the ball further because on those angles, right, it's just the odds of keeping it in that little bitty fairway that far away are just really small. So like moving forward, I could see it making a lot of sense always having a graduated grid. I don't know how you feel about that. It maybe creates less parity and it gives guys who are in the 215 realm a little bit less opportunity to win. But do you think that's something the sport should adopt, or do you just think it's just to stick with a grid that's even and the same width the entire way? Jason, I'm asking you, and Bobby, I'm interested to hear your view on that. I know Kyle's view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was shocked to see Kyle's ball only in by 3 inches because like I sat there, I watched every single shot. I'm sitting behind these guys, and his ball was in by easily 10 yards. Great.
It had him taking a big kick to the right.
I was like, holy ish, because like I could hear everything that was going on in my ear, which was hilarious, by the way. The executive producer, I mean, he was on one. He was on a heater that day, and I heard Art and Shane Bacon in the booth, and then I heard the executive producers, what have you. I heard the ball.
No, hey, give me a specific example. Give me a specific example.
Well, I would.
What do you mean he's on one?
Over under, he dropped 500 F-bombs in 3 hours. And I'm sitting there interviewing, like hearing these things and waiting. And it's so funny because I'm not like versed for this whatsoever. You know, I'm sitting in the booth and I have Elon, who I call the boss that I have, you know, Elon that we have to answer to. But that was fun. But yeah, like being able to see ball.
No, but I want to know. I want to know, Bobby. Like, what do you mean? Like, was he saying that about the production? Was he saying that about?
Oh no, I don't know. Like
he
was the executive producer. I mean, you want a reality TV show? You've seen executive producers go off.
No, I know.
Like,
I'm just asking if he was like reacting to the event itself, like, oh my God, that ball almost went OB, or if he's
it wasn't like it wasn't like that. No,
okay.
I was just talking about the actual production in general. But like Kyle's ball, I was able to hear. Like, I mean, I saw it. I'm like, that wasn't easy, but I was shocked to hear like on the radio before they announced his yardage that he was only in by like 3 inches. I'm like, holy ish, you know, because I would have thought that was in by a ton. And then when you go back and look at the footage, you know, I mean, obviously it benefited him because I remember when I showed up to the grid, first person I called was Jay-Z sending pictures and stuff. I mean, hey, it's 53 yards at 350. It's 57 yards at 400. And it fans out to like 66 yards at 450. But the grid was so like up on the left side, like I mean, like it was kind of irrelevant. And when you look at the grid and you take a picture, if you were able to turn it in at like 350, 370, it actually benefited where it was a soup bowl where it went to the center of the grid. But once you got past like 390, 400, it kind of rolled back right, you know? And I mean, the best drive I saw was obviously James Tate's and Phyllis Meddy's, and they both went 382 and 452. James Tate's ball went up, and then it was like rolling on a table for like 7 seconds. I'm like, oh, that ball is gone. And, you know, it hit that slot and went out 452 yards, you know, and then Phyllis goes 382. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, 5 sets gives the fastest guys on the planet opportunities to make errors and opportunities to make adjustments. And I've said this for the last 4 years, you know, on the telecast. Justin James can make modifications. He can hit a high, hit a low, hit a cut, hit a draw. Like, guys like him make a lot of modifications throughout an event because they have so many points, just like Kyle, after like three sets, that the next 2 sets, you know, they got 12 balls to like freewheel it and do whatever they want. You know, like Phyllis essentially was freewheeling it and went 382, you know, after she was so far in the lead at like 340. But, you know, that's the
So long story short, you didn't answer my question because you're an idiot, as usual. Do you like the graduated grid?
Yes. As a hitter, no, of course not. I want that grid to be 40 yards wide, and I want dumb elimination. You know, like Jay-Z had back.
Yeah, you want OB. You want OB long. You want OB long at like 360. You're like, too far.
100 yards wide until 350, and then it narrows to 10 yards.
Right.
I think the format of the round robin is the most fair format to get the fastest and the longest guys on the planet. Obviously. You know, it would be nice.
Well, I wasn't asking about the round robin. I was asking about the graduated grid.
I would like the graduated grid. Yes, I like the graduated grid.
Okay, Jason, graduated grid, yes or no, and why?
Okay, to preface this, I did, field a lot of, what do you want to call it, complaints and such about the graduated grid, and I guess just from the standpoint, it hadn't been in play all year, and it was in play for the World Championship. But when I explain it to people, when Kyle and I talked about this, at length before, in any, sport where we have a projectile and it's, the the performance is measured by linear distance, it's a graduated grid, right? Okay, so why is that? Well, like if we bring it back, I ran the math this morning, and just some generalities. For instance, so if we're dead in the center of the grid and a guy hits it 350 and another guy hits it 400, the guy that hits it 400 has to be 20% better at controlling dispersion. So not only just the the direction, but also the other factors that is most people don't hit it exactly straight. We're hitting it with curvature, a little fade, a little draw. So as the golf ball travels further linear distance, it also chews up side. It also adds side dispersion to it, right? So I factored everything in, and the longer player has to be about 20% better at controlling his dispersion at a faster speed, which is almost like that doesn't make any sense. Why shouldn't the faster player be afforded the same amount of margin of error as the slower player? That's only fair, right? Unless you say,
Well, it's
well,
not like it's called World Long Drive or anything,
right,
though.
right,
It has nothing to do with how far you
right,
hit the ball.
right, but
It's an accuracy contest.
right. So, and I just looked at the that grid, for instance, at at 350 or 400, and then at 450, that's about a realistic kind of escalation in grid width, where we have about a like almost like a 10-yard difference from 450 to 400, and then perhaps just a little less at 350. But just that's a realistic um, uh, graduation of that grid to afford the faster player with the same amount of margin for error. So I quite like it. But on the standpoint of, well, like the slower guys are going to have a hard time, true, but in the grand scope of things, I think the graduated grid is probably the 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 best test of fairness across the board, right? To equate all players of all skill, right? It just it does require more precision when you're shorter, but it does have that equal amount of precision as we get longer. So I do like it for those reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
Yeah, and I'll
because
speak
if
on
they're
it.
gonna
I'll go ahead, Kyle. Go ahead.
not, yeah, I was just gonna say because like one of the things that made this year tough for a lot of the top guys. I mean, guys that create a ton of speed, like myself, Martin, Seb, all those guys. Is like not only were we in a situation where obviously the grid had been the way it was for a while with it being a rectangle, but there's other factors now that have been introduced that make it tougher for the top guys because you've minimized the sample size in the most critical juncture of the tournament to 6 balls against a singular hitter who you could draw. Doesn't matter how well you do in the tournament, you can draw. Look at the round of 16 matches. I drew Martin in Rockwell, and I drew Sam Atanasio, member of the 240 Club in Tennessee, for a round of 16 matches, even though I was either one of the top or the top seed. So, like, that stuff doesn't do anything because the seeding is only based on 5 sets. And so, so you've minimized the sample size, and you've lowered the ball count by 2. And on top of that, the ball may or may not respond better, or even regardless, to higher speeds. So, like, the climate was extremely difficult for top guys who had 225 plus ball speed to show up and to produce their best. So I felt like, the graduated grid allowed the best hitters who created the most speed to make it. And here's something really cool. this is a proof of the concept at work. If you take the average ball speed of the round of 16, 7 of the 8 top average ball speeds made it into the final 8. The only 2, Jack Smith didn't make it. He was 8th in average ball speed. And Bryce Repenning did, and he was 11th. So if you look at it, the guys who were hitting the ball the hardest, the most consistently, made it through and were identified. And that's why it's important that these formats are chosen for a very good reason. And I understand people may say, oh, well, there should be, it shouldn't be like that because, the other guys need a chance. But like, I would honestly say to that, like, this isn't in the end a sport about maximum distance. This is an extreme sport. And, the reality is that the purpose of this sport is to identify the biggest freaks, the guys who hit the ball the furthest. And the sport has to cater to those guys, or else we're not going to have a product. Our best
Yeah, and
product
look at it. Look at it like from a viewership standpoint too. Let's say you tune in to watch and you see your ball rolling, it's at 415, 420, 425, and all of a sudden you see it roll out of bounds.
Yep.
You're like, okay, he just got eliminated, but he was 35 yards longer than the other guy. Like, that's stupid. That's what they're going to think. They don't care. It's like if you go to a home run derby and a guy hits one 600 feet, but it's foul. You're not like, oh, like that was foul. He sucks. You're like, you just hit one 600. You don't care. The people that are tuning in just want to see the ball go really far. And they're not like, oh, well, he should have hit it in play. That's not really what they're thinking. They're thinking, wait, that thing was in play for forever and it rolled out. He got screwed. Like, so you got to look at it from that standpoint as well. If you have balls rolling out in play and the only reason it went out of bounds is because it went too far, it's like, it's the same thing. And a lot of people listening can probably relate. There's probably some long hitters in this group that maybe play on Sundays with your buddies, and you got buddies that are hitting at 230, 240, and they're slicing it or pulling it or whatever, but they're always in play. And they have the audacity to tell you that you hit it crooked because you're in your pocket all the time. It's like, dude, I guarantee you that my percentage offline is actually better than yours, but you hit it so short that it always stays in play. Like, people just are so dumb about stuff like that. It's like, like my grandma, she probably won't listen to this. I was eating dinner with her last night, and she shout out Granny, and she's like, I've been a lot shorter. She's like an 88-year-old woman, which is amazing that she's still playing golf. But she's like, I've been a lot shorter, but I'm always in the fairway. I'm like, well, yeah, like, yeah. I mean, yes, you can literally miss it 90 degrees each way and probably still be in the fairway, but that's the point. And I've always said this about Kyle. If you've never watched any of us, or any of us really, watch us in person, yeah, we have some big misses, but for the most part, the ball flight is pretty straight. It's pretty straight. Like, when you watch it, it's a little movement one way or another, and you're not going to say those guys are crooked. Yes, it adds up to being a long way offline, but all these things add up to, yes, graduated grid just makes sense, and we'll see what they do about it next year. But if you're looking at it from a logical perspective, it makes sense. So that's my input on the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I think in general, it'll be exciting to see what happens next year with the format and the sport. I'm just very excited for where things are headed for the players and just in general, like just the sport. I just want to see things continue to progress, and we're gonna have more TV events next year, which I'm really excited about. And so, it's gonna be interesting to see how things continue to progress and that kind of thing. It's something I was curious about. So let's change topics briefly here, because I'm curious, Jason, for your input on this, because I'm very well versed in the history of the sport, and I honestly believe, had there been readily available, extremely accurate launch monitors back in the day, that because I know there were some, but they were maybe a little bit. There wasn't a gold standard like TrackMan or Foresight now. Do you think, let's just pretend TrackMan was invented in 1995? Do you envision, and I think I already know the answer to this, but do you envision there would have been a speed war in your generation the way that there's a speed war now with ball speed? Because I've always been curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. The history of like kind of the launch monitor side, like TrackMan and Flight Scope sort of became, this prominent one of the radar-based ones, but not till somewhere in the 2000s, right? Like I had the exact dates of those, but back we did actually Titleist and one of the Japanese companies, Bridgestone or Sumitomo SRI, Srixon. Um, but Titleist back in the day actually had a monitor that used reflective markers on the ball, and it was a optical monitor, much like the Foresight. And Titleist developed this, and it was called the TLM, Titleist Launch Monitor, and that one tracked, you know. Initial golf ball velocity, launch angle, spin rate, um, and a few other parameters as well. But it seemed, like it, it was kind of the best iteration of golf ball velocity tracking at the time. Obviously, there was some stuff we could do with the Phantom camera at the time and some of the real high speed cameras, but having that was not readily accessible to players, right? So it was, maybe on a Titleist fitting, Titleist research, and the guys in Japan, like the particular players, tour development research in Japan on the Japanese side, the kind of this parallel development. But going back to sort of these ball speed benchmarks, with the Titleist launch monitor, and when we finally compared it versus TrackMan, it seemed to be pretty tight though. Like it was very scrutinizing as far as initial ball speed. And back in the day, myself winning, 1996, 97, 98, 99, finishing second in 2000. And, a lot of guys, they said, oh, Jason's not all that fast, but, he just hits it in or whatever. But in reality, I was pretty fast, right? Like if we look at, sort of these ball speed benchmarks, although we didn't have this, the accessibility, but in 1997 I was the first one to exceed this 200 miles an hour, which they had never seen before, which by today's standard, that's not a huge but back in the day with a Titleist 975 260cc head,
There you
with
go.
like
It's like a 9 wood. You're hitting
yeah,
a
like
9 wood.
yeah, the old Pinnacle golf ball technology. I was the first one to eclipse that 200 mile an hour. I think that day I put up a 205, 204, something like
Ooh,
that. With good
that's
launch and
unbelievable.
spin. And then
That's fast.
1998, I was able to eclipse the 210 mark. So the first one to break 200, first one to break 210 in 1998 at the Titleist Oceanside facility. I think it was right around 211. I would have to look up the numbers, but again, good launch and good spin. And then the first one to eclipse 215. And then in 2002, in a promotional trip to Japan, I was the first one, that either Titleist knew about on the TLM or Bridgestone, or it could have been SRI with their monitor. I achieved 100 meters per second in March of 2002 with the Cobra head, the old original 427 SS Penley
Wow.
shaft at 48 inches, 100 meters per second, roughly about 223 miles an hour
Yeah.
with the Pinnacle ball. So, but to Kyle's question, would there if guys would have known about ball speed, and then obviously Bobby made a good point that it's just you can be the fastest guy in the world, but if you don't hit it in play, or you have not very good club delivery, creating not optimal launch or spin, or the tilt on the ball that reflects in the dispersion, you still need to put it all together in that package. But to Kyle's question, I think there would have been a speed war, because
Yeah.
I would have been probably the one setting the these distance benchmarks, and it would have paralleled what's happening now, where we see Kyle putting up a big speed, then Martin tries to put up a big speed, then Seb tries to put up a big speed, and then Sam Atanasio, like everybody's trying to put up big speed. And Kyle created this speed war, right? Because he was the one leading the charge, and everybody else was trying to play catch up. And then somebody passes Kyle, Kyle passes them, and it's this back and forth. But we realize this ball speed war, it's ongoing, and it's never going to stop. There may be a limitation with the even this golf ball that we have presently. We see when we track the performance of that ball, it's a pretty linear performance. Like when we hit good shots with good launch and spin from, just say 195 miles an hour ball speed all the way to 217, 218. It's a very linear. It's a linear performance. Uh, uh, Linear performance. Uh, the slope of that line. So, we have the same amount of performance gain when we have an increase in ball speed. But after that 218, we see that line flatten where, of course, like if we had a fair grid, not that uphill where Bobby's landing it into and Kyle landed in the face of that hill. If we had a dead flat, grid with same grid conditions, we see less benefit of these bigger ball speeds after 218. But of course, for instance, if a guy hits it with perfect launch and spin at 220, but Kyle hits it at perfect launch and spin 230, which we saw Kyle against Zach Holton in the one, it's virtually impossible to beat unless you land it on a sprinkler head, right? So, but again, with this ball, we have that flattening. It's not that linear representation of performance versus the speed, right? But yeah, that ball speed is huge. But again, we want to still, we need to pay some attention to club delivery and creating good launch and spin, and that coming back around, there was a ball James Tate hit in the final 8. James, as Bobby Bradley mentioned, I would say, if we graded the competition, obviously Kyle won, but up until, the final, I would say we had, James Tate and Justin James, had, an exemplary performance. Kyle had been excellent, although some OB rounds, right? So, I would say, James, Justin, and James Tate, were the best performances. Kyle, obviously, with his speed and such, but just that little asterisk with some of the OB sets, right? And Kyle did eventually win, but we saw a ball that James Tate hit in the first match where he hit it high in the face. Obviously this grid is funky and it produced some of these uncharacteristic distances that we would have assumed a lot longer distances. But James Tate hit one high in the face, 205 ball speed, good spin, probably high launch, probably 17 because he hit it right on the above center. But that one went 405, right? So that's just the so we do see these anomalies once in a while, and that was more of a grid condition where Kyle, his ball against the first match, obviously against Justin, hit a great ball, huge ball speed, perfect launch and spin, and produced one of the longest shots of the entire, final 8, right? And then the next match against Zach Holton, Kyle hit it like, I slowed it down as much as I could, but I mean, that one flew 394, 395 right dead into the face of that hill. It popped up and rolled 3 yards. That one was a 230 plus at, I believe, 2200 spin, good launch, probably, axis tilt was probably 6, meaning that the amount of curvature on that one was, I bet you 10, 12 yards max. That ball should have went 440 yards. And then Kyle's ball against Sean Johnson in the final, again, that one 230 plus, again 16 and change spin, which that's right in that nice window. Good launch. I would say he probably launched that one 12 and a half from what I saw on TV, but again, that one had a touch more axis tilt, so maybe moving 20 yards, but it hit right in the same face of that hill, right? And so 394, 395 carry popped up, rolled to 398. I would have gave him 399 on that one. They kind of rounded him down on it. I would have liked to seen him get a 99 out of it, but anyway. But just that element of this, the rub of the green, I guess you call it. The grid dictating, some of these yardages. The sort of not telling the whole story, like unless you watched it on TV and knew how undulating the grid was.
Yeah, like that was the best part about it was like all the press is like Berkshire wins in nail biting fashion, just right. Barely ekes by.
It's like, you're right.
But I mean, listen. In fairness to,
but Sean Johnson, did Sean Johnson did the same thing though? Did he hit his left, or was his down the right?
His was just right of mine, but he just carried about 383, 384. It was a 219 or 220 ball. Like,
So
here's the deal.
even his didn't roll out a ton either, in fairness.
No,
But yeah, yours
yeah,
just hit and stop.
that was an incredible final. So like the first three balls I hit, all three of them I absolutely smoked, and they were like OB off the sides by like 5 to 7 yards. And I actually think my slowest ball of all four of those swings in the championship match was like 229. Like I smoked all four of them, absolutely killed them, and that's what I was thinking. I was like, after those first three, even though I went OB, I was like, you know, I'm hitting. I in my mind, I was like, there is no chance humanly possible I could possibly hit these next three balls out of bounds the way I'm hitting it right now. I felt so dialed in, and I wasn't really, never really occurred to me that I would at that point that I would not put a good ball in play. But no, and I remember when I hit the fourth ball, I saw it. I actually was shocked on the telecast that it was 230 because I felt like I hit it a groove low. But like it was one of those things where I saw it fly and I knew this thing was headed. I knew it was going to hit right into this mogul. I just knew it. And so what I was hoping for, the left side, um, it kicks hard, but there's about 12 to 15 yards of room left. And all I was asking for was just kick straight, kick straight. Like I didn't even care if it got a good bounce. I just wanted it to bounce forward. Last thing I wanted was to hit the left side of the mogul and just kick dead left OB. So I don't know how many words I said to that ball while I was in air, but I said a lot of words to it. I was trying to get on the same wavelength as the golf ball. Telepathically, I was I would say I was willing that ball to go straight and to kick straight because like I really didn't want to have to tee up a fifth ball in that set with because like the tough thing about winning championship matches, and I'm sure Jason you can relate to this as well, is when you know that your game is good enough where you feel like you should win, it's extremely difficult. And I'm actually very fortunate where I haven't had to experience this because I'm very proud of the fact that in season-ending championships, so like including the 2020 national championship, I'm 4 for 4 on championship matches when it's come to slamming the door shut and finishing off a tournament. But like that would be a very difficult thing for me if I knew I made it to a championship match and the door was open and it was there for the taking, and I gone all this way, and I didn't slam the door shut with that last ball, and like it's a very unique form of pressure. But like guys like Sean Johnson, Zach Holton, these are guys that are going to be there every single week, And I question for you, Jason, about this. So because you've obviously been there, many times, and what is it like to go all this way? Because I'm sure many people have wondered this in their heads when they go through the scenarios and visualize their success in these championships. What is it like to have gone through this tournament, go through this entire way, and the scenario, the saying where you can certainly lose it, but you can't win it for so long, and then all of a sudden you're in that championship match. You're one big drive away from taking it home, and that you're the longest hitter in that match. What is that pressure like when you literally just need one more drive and are you trying to will it in? Are you trying to forget about that? Are you trying to hit good shots? Like what's going through your head when you're trying to win these world championships and you're in that final match?
Right. I guess a little, going back, kind of rolling back time a little bit in, my first 4 world championships, and all the way up until you, all the way up until like from 1995 through 2000, and I believe it was 2005.
They were shootouts.
Yeah, they were shootouts. So what that meant is that we had the final 8 competitors, and then they would blind draw the competitors to hit in order. So there was no match play. It was like you either drew wherever you drew, you had your spot to hit, and like you had 6 balls to bring your best forward, right? And the nice thing about the shootout is that we were guaranteed that some guys would not perform to the expectation level, but we would have quite a few guys that would perform to their expectation, or maximally. So, we're not going to have a ball that wasn't hit well winning. Like, you're going to have multiple balls that were hit really well. And Kyle, we talked about this before, but I was thinking back that even in that format, um, if you're drawn first versus last, like, it puts a lot of pressure. If you're drawn first, you got to sit through 7 other guys to see if they can beat you, right? And or if you're drawn last, then whatever you get the hammer position, what everybody has to hit. So it's incredibly nerve wracking sitting through that. But thinking about it, it had never conditions had never dictated somebody not performing at the absolute best level winning. What I mean by that is, the conditions change so much from the first hitter to the 8th hitter that determine the winner of the competition. That never happened. The guy that hit it the best always won. Like, even the only issue we had was that we would do the finals of the Remax World Long Drive Championship, or the WLD, the Volvic World Long Drive Championship. That was many years contested at night under the lights. But as the night progresses, temperature tends to drop, especially in the desert,
Mhm.
right? So, other than wind, that temperature plays quite a difference. But even outside of that, the difference in condition never dictated a change in who should have won the competition, right? But so incredibly taxing. You have to bring your best to the tee and just leave it out there, and just be on the slaughtering block to see if anybody can beat you. And I was in that unique position. The first time I made it to the World Championship, I won the whole thing. Then I won again and again. And then that 5th year, that was the only time in uh, other than the first year, which I had the hammer position, didn't hit it particularly well and still won. But all the other years, performed to my maximum capability and claimed those championships. But that 5th year, I didn't hit it really good. It was like a groove low, but we had a big wind in our face. And it's kind of a unique condition where they changed the competition from the night because we had 100-mile-an-hour winds. And that year, it could have, these wind conditions could have dictated, but they eventually didn't. But probably the toughest thing in my life was that I was probably, I think, the 4th hitter to go, and then Victor Johansson was right after me, and then he got it a yard by me. So the announcement over the the microphone system is, we have a new leader, and that was pretty crushing for me, because I'd never experienced defeat in
Yeah.
in a realistic large scale log drive competition. And then I guess fast forward to 2006, now match play, and every one of those matches, you know I I had the feeling that if I hit my best ball, these guys couldn't beat me, right? Like, whether that be, realistic or not, or whatever. I fully believe that if I hit it to my capability, that no one could beat me, right? So I went into the first match, and it was a super tough match against Baden YY, big fellow from New Zealand. He hit, you know, one of the best balls of the competition, and it made me take notice, but I thought I just have to hit a better ball. So I ended up beating him, and then, just putting, that the best ball forward, going forward. But I guess having that confidence in my preparation, having the confidence in, my ability to bring it to the tee at the right time, just thinking about what I had done in the past, and the mindset I had been in to win those championships, to get myself in the appropriate mental condition and to be able to perform on the tee.
And what were your thoughts going? Because, like, one of the cool things. So I grew up watching you. I remember watching your 2006 win. I didn't watch it live. I think, but they packaged it up as like a kind of tape delay scenario thing, I think, as well.
Right.
But I remember growing up, I watched it as a young kid. And what was it like going through? It was either 4 or 5 years of, going from winning 4 years in a row to then going 4 or 5 years without winning. I'm sure people were all saying, like, is he going to win again? Or he was good in the late '90s. What was it like to win that title and kind of prove that you were still the longest hitter in the world at that time?
Yeah, it was, it was tough, Kyle. Like that, 99, I won 2000, lost to Victor by a yard. So I really put a good effort in 2001. And if you look at the yardages from there and everything, and I hit the longest drive of the competition. I hit the longest drive of the semifinal. I hit the longest drive of, any of the qualifying rounds, like, within the same condition, like, you know, in the same, within a block and such. So there was a pretty, it was pretty, definitive that I was hitting it really well. And I got in the final and I didn't hit it good. And it was like this wake up call where, what's going on, because I'd never really not hit it well in the final, and it was so quite disheartening for me that, like, I had always prided myself in rising to the occasion, being able to bring my best when it counted, and that year, seventh, I guess I finished, right. And then the next year I had a little bit unfortunate, so I finished ninth this next year. Still put in a pretty good effort. Then 11th, and then I kind of was on that teetering bubble of cracking into that final 8, but I guess it wasn't element of not having the physical ability, but I guess that mental that kind of the mental makeup, and I guess the ability to handle kind of loss and self-doubt and such. And I started working with a sports psychologist, and we kind of it took a long time, but I mean, realizing the components that I needed to instill to allow myself to perform to my highest level on the biggest stage. That was the probably the biggest thing, that the sports psychology. I was still powerful and fast and strong, and swung really fast and stuff, but I just wasn't able to kind of get it to that finished product, either the tour events or the world championship, in that kind of that dry spell. But then quite a bit of validation in that 2006, coming back. And I probably should have quit at that point, because I would have had 5 and 10 years and a 50% winning margin. But then being a stubborn, hard-headed long drive guy, kept pounding my head against the wall trying to win more championships against some of these juggernauts like Sadlowski and Miller and Carl Walter, and then Tim Burke, right? Like, it just but we love the sport, and you always want to put your best out there and think that your best is still competitive, right? So
yeah, I think one of the things that sucks, yeah, I think one of the things that sucks, like, it's like, I think a lot of my career I didn't get the pleasure of having my career overlap with yours or Sadlowski, and to be able to have competed with one of you guys would have been really cool. And I've heard through the grapevine that you might maybe compete at some point next year. If things line up. I know, you and I have kept in contact a lot throughout the year, and so just for people watching, the numbers he's putting out, like, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we're talking 215, 217, and probably pushing 220 when you really get going, and you obviously know how to win. So, certainly not putting any pressure.
Yeah,
on
where you been, bro?
I kind of fought with the the Golf Channel WLD guys for a bit. We had a what we call a difference of opinion, I guess. Matt Farrell did a really good job, though, to be honest. And Matt was really trying to progress the sport, and it was really unfortunate where I want to Bobby Peterson, One Stop Power Shop, Kyle's coach, and is he your coach too, Bobby Ray? Is Bobby your coach?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Bobby's my coach.
But I mean, the Golf Channel, NBC Universal, Comcast, when COVID hit in 2000, they put long drive on the shelf. They wanted to sell the sport. They they were how would I phrase this? They weren't able to sell it for what they perceived to be the value, so they just put it on the shelf. And the only person that kept the sport going is Bobby Peterson, Ryan Riesback, Landon Gentry. And Kyle had a huge impact on keeping because Kyle was the current champion. So, but I mean, without the One Stop Power Shop and the PLDA, like, this sport would have vanished off the face of the earth, right? And Bryson being involved really, kind of, almost, I wouldn't say like he saved the sport, but he definitely bolstered, like the interest. And with Bryson, created a huge amount of interest in that 2021 or 2021 timeframe, right? So and then also 2022. But the PLDA, kind of was the driving force behind keeping long drive like somewhat relevant, right? So hats off to Bobby and all the guys for the hard work they did, and and the vision and the passion and the love for the sport, because if not, we wouldn't have had like anything to be a part of, right? So, and I think speaking going forward, I think the GF have this great potential, with World Long Drive product. And we have this sort of golden age of hitters. We have all this technology at our disposal to make the viewing and the interaction at at the at the consumer level, like tremendously engaging. Like what we need is like we need some big sponsors. Like back in the day, we had Remax as a global sponsor, which to help the global reach of Long Drive, right? And just some of these bigger sponsors. But I think that the athletes we have are excellent. I think the competition is excellent. And I just think getting that right mix of kind of that format, fan engagement, kind of understanding the sport, getting it on TV, whether it be the Golf Channel or other means, right? And I think that the sky's the limit, but right, the good decisions have to be made to highlight the players, right? Like it's not it's not the broadcast, it's not the technology, the the medium. We have a vast array of mediums that we can display it, but ultimately, what does it boil down to? It's the players that are the equity in this whole thing, and we need to make the decisions to bring the players to the forefront, give them the best opportunity to show what they can do, and do it in a way that the consumer is engaged with, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really great sentiment with regards to the way the sport's moving forward. And as I said, I'm gonna, as the reigning champion, one of my biggest goals this off season is to get the best deal for the players that I can, in terms of prize money and setup and things like that. And I think it was a great first year for GF, and a great learning year. That's what I've always stressed to people is like, yeah, there might be stuff that's done that you're not happy with, but this is their first year, and there's going to be growing pains and stuff like that. So I've always kind of stressed that, and I'm excited to see where things go from here. I think it'll be really cool, and I would love to see them. What I thought was really cool in 2019 was they brought you back to the World Championship, and it was cool to have you out there. And I still remember. I mean, I said this to you before. When I was down to my last ball against Tommy Hug, I looked back in the stands. You were the only person I actually happened to pick out when I did like a brief look back before my last thing. I was like, oh God, Jason's watching me just vomit all over my first televised set of Worlds, So, and then I hit that ball, and things fortunately worked out. But I guess maybe one more question for you. I guess I would say, looking back on your career, what do you think for you was the proudest moment of your career where you really felt like you showed people who you were, and it was something you could hang your hat on, because all the greats have a, whether it's baseball, they have a pitching performance where they threw a shutout in the World Series, or someone hit a grand slam late in the game to change the complexion of a huge game. Tiger won the 19 Masters, all that stuff. So like when you look back on your career, what is one achievement in your career that you hang your hat on, that you would say was your crowning achievement if you had to pick? Because there's a lot to pick from, but if there was one that stood out to you, what do you think that would be?
Yeah, there was kind of one really important ball in 2008. I had a really tough group in where at this point it was still that modified double elimination, but this was into the second day now, and I had a really tough group, and all the other guys, and I was the last one to go in that group, and all the other guys, it was much like the the competition that like that final 16 that we saw this year, where it was really guys performing to their maximum, and I got down to my last ball, and much like you with a flair for the dramatic, um, and being able to bring this this you know the best possible effort at the best possible time. I ended up hitting the longest ball of the set, the longest ball of the day, the longest ball of the competition. Without that one, it would have been two in a row, and my streak would have been ended. So that it was like this. It wasn't even in the final, and it was one of those ones where you needed to do it, or this whole thing goes away, right? And then, as collectively, that 2006 where everybody was saying that I was done, had no chance, and to come back and win, put in a good effort where I wasn't injured during the year, a full effort, a periodized training program to where I was the best coming into that thing, and to put it all together physically and mentally and prove all those people wrong, Kyle. Like people, oh, Kyle hasn't won in a year. Well, I don't know if he'll ever be the same after he broke his hand. It's these things that you take to heart, and you want to prove them wrong, and you want to do it at the time. And collectively, that tournament, that kind of put that exclamation point on my career as right now, as you got out of the shadow of Joe Miller, two-time world champion, Carl Walter, two-time world champion, Tim Burke, two-time world champion. You got out of the shadow of those guys, and progress into the light with Sean Pfister, three-time champion, and myself being the five-time in the Open. So at that point, Sean had three championships. I had four, so he was in striking distance, but then.
Mm-hmm.
That created that that extra degree of buffer to just say, hey, I was pretty good, and I'm still pretty good at that time, right? So those were the two kind of points in my career where things where I could point to where they were very distinctive and kind of dictating as far as my legacy. And I know you talk about legacy as well.
Mm-hmm.
Apart, like, you had a great point about money is awesome, and the prestige, but being able to compete for legacy, for like your own personal goals, and to put your stamp on where you fit in this whole aspect of the history of the sport.
Yeah,
One thing that I wanted to bring up, so the one thing I wanted to bring up that I hope that GF Sports and Entertainment does is bring back the Hall of Fame. I mean, you earned that right to be a Hall of Famer. You're a Hall of Famer under LDA and World Lawn Drive. It didn't seem like they wanted to acknowledge it, back in the day. And then PLDA, I mean, we've always acknowledged you as a Hall of Famer. And I hope that they bring that back and bring back the guys that built the sport, because at the end of the day, like I met you in 2007. That was my first year. I met you in St. Louis. I brought one driver, and here you are with two massive Cobra bags with like 7,000 drivers. I'm like, can I borrow a driver, please? And just like, Art Sellinger just giving me that platform, coming out of professional baseball. Here I am playing cards, and I show up. And funny enough, the first person I stepped on a tee box with was Victor Johansson at a local in 2007, that ended up winning the world championship. I ended up beating Oristaglio. So it was me and Oristaglio. I go in 361 to his 355, but Lawn Drive's given us a lot. And, when you sign a professional baseball contract and I'm sitting next to a Hall of Famer and Bill Mazeroski, like you acknowledge the people that came before you. And I feel like that's something that has to happen, that GF Sports needs to do, is bring back the Hall of Fame and acknowledge the guys that paved the way, and because you're the GOAT. You don't have, I know you're Golfzilla, but in Lawn Drive, you're the best to ever do it. And I know that Kyle, being Kyle, he's 26 years old. He's on a warpath, to try to win as many as he possibly can. But, at the same time, you set the bar, and you are the bar. And, it's been an honor to have you on. I mean, we could sit here and talk for another couple hours, but we got to wrap this one up. But I said, I want you to become, a staple to this because, like I said, you're our lawn drive hero, and it's been fun. And for me, sitting in the booth, I'm not a technical guy. I'm an analytics guy. I understand numbers, but when it comes down to the mechanics of the swing and, just to be able to like, hey, Jay-Z, I have no idea how to answer this. And you give me, well, like I said, I have a third grade level spelling, reading comprehension. But, to be able to dumb it down for me to explain in the booth has helped me out a lot. So, you are the encyclopedia and the best to ever do it. So we want to thank you for your time joining the Bombers Club. And let's keep on trucking along because you are the Hall of Famer, the 5-time world champ open, Jay-Z. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to say one thing real at the end. I really do appreciate it. And I just want people to know, just so people understand Jason's character, he's always been there for me whenever I've had a question. Every single world championship, I can promise you, and you can confirm this, there's been a lot of phone time between me and Jason, him helping me to keep my wits about me throughout the week and stuff like that. So, I'm really appreciative of that on a personal level. And, it's great to be good friends and to be able to kind of have conversations about the sport and things like that. And it takes a level of honor and humility and just in general, just being a good person and be willing to be involved with, I guess you could say the new turds on the block, the ones that are coming up, and I guess you could say. But I've always appreciated your time, Jason, and I really do appreciate you coming on. I think this is really insightful. I think a lot of people are going to be hanging on to every word you have to say because I think it's really cool to hear someone who is the best to ever do their craft talk about it and expand upon it in detail. So that was really fascinating, and I appreciate you sharing your time and your wisdom with us. This was a really cool discussion.
Thanks. I appreciate being on and, being a part of, having just the ability to interact with you, Kyle. And, you're a true champion, man. Like my hat's off to you. Like you work really hard. You've got, incredible physical gifts, but when that hard work and the physical gifts and you're an intelligent person and, like you're kind of a throwback, right? Because, sometimes, people, in your position aren't the way you are, right? So, and it's interesting, like you and I could talk technical stuff a lot, and we could talk launch monitors and all that stuff. But most often, we're talking just mental stuff, right? And it's just it's been fun to maybe I don't have all the right answers, but I've got a perspective, right? And a champion's perspective. And like I said, maybe it's it's not a perfect answer, but I can give you what I think, and hopefully I've had a positive effect. Obviously, you've got Bobby is a great coach, and you're very discerning and very good at deciphering everything about it. But it's been great because I really enjoy the sport. I really enjoy watching you guys compete, yourself, and I see Bobby Ray as well, adding a lot on the standpoint of entertainment and personality. On that standpoint, like you just can't have drones going up there and hitting balls. Like you need guys with that have personality, that have relate to our viewing audience, right? And then whether you like Bobby or you hate him, whatever it be, like go watch Paradise Hotel when Bobby won. Like you'll see the variety of.
I have a question. Do you think I should get my arms bigger to try to win a world championship next year?
I don't know, man. One thing, Victor Johansson, like, he always used to, he would always try to, compare himself to me, right? Like no matter what I would do, he's like, hey, Zuback. He called me Zuback. He would say, hey, Jason Zuback, how much you bench? And I'm like, I don't know, Victor, like 450. He goes, I bench 600. And so everything was, but anyway, he got his arms so big.
That's ridiculous.
Right. He got his arms so big, it would hit his head and he would lose vision of the ball. So, keeping that in mind, Bobby Ray, that maybe
I don't do arm workouts. I really don't. And I've been telling everybody this and they don't believe me. But I used to back in college. I don't anymore. I digress. I'm going to say this, though. Last thing I'm going to say is Kyle, Bobby, and I are going to be working out this off season. You're going to see a different animal. Kyle is going to be the most marketable guy in the golf space, including PGA Tour guys. Starting next year, he's going to be tan. He's going to be chiseled. We're going to get him maybe an earring going. He's going to just be the most marketable golfer you've ever seen. So that's my job, and Kyle's job in return is to get me up to 230 ball speed. So we have a nice little trade off going. So
And I'm going to
the
get to
Bombers,
55 pounds bench. You know, I'm going to try to max out at 55 pounds on the bench for sure. I'm only at
yeah.
45 right now.
So
I'll tell
good
you what,
times, yeah.
Bobby Bradley and I have like this commonality with the Peloton, right? Like it's
Yeah.
interesting because we love the Peloton, and I do it just for general health, and Bobby pushes some huge power numbers and stuff, and
I try to crush myself.
There's some tremendous capacity that Bobby has in the Peloton, and then we talk about our girl Kendall Toole that is one of the Peloton instructors and stuff. So, but there is this sort of synergy of kind of this like Peloton and long drive that kind of has this kind of meshing together for some reason. But
people love numbers, man. Analytics. People love
true.
numbers and they like hitting numbers. So
that's true.
I'll try to get the 210 ball speed. Like I texted you yesterday, Jay-Z. I think that would be a challenge. But the one person that always believes in me is Kyle. He's like, we could do it. I got to hit the gym,
Yes.
So I appreciate his confidence in me.
All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed that podcast from the Bombers Club with Jason Zuback. If you did, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow Jason Zuback on all of the socials.